The New York Ranger fourth line continues to excel in a 6-1 win over the Philadelphia Flyers. What does the future hold for Filip Chytil? And are the Rangers actually, against all odds, going to make the playoffs?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1232 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So for the second straight game, the Rangers beat a team that they're neck and neck with in terms of the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. They obviously took care of business against the Senators, and now in this game, a 6-1 convincing runaway victory against the Philadelphia Flyers. One of those games that's just a lot of fun to watch as a fan, and you see just about every single player on the Ranger roster get involved, do something positive in this game to help the Rangers on their way to another win, and another crucial win. Now 7-0-3 in their last 10 games, and just 1 point out of the final playoff spot. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, going to talk about, where things stand, and is this Ranger team actually going to get into the playoffs, and will this recent surge, affect their strategy at the trade deadline? JT Miller, is he coming to the Rangers? All that good stuff. But for right now, man, I want to shine the spotlight on the blue-collar guys for the Rangers, the guys that, I would call them unsung heroes, but I feel like they're getting their due recently. I think most Ranger fans are very well aware of how well these guys have played, and that is the Ranger fourth-line trio of Adam Edstrom, Sam Carrick, and Matt Rempe. They were outstanding again in this game. It feels like just about every game, these guys are good for a goal every time they go out there. I mean, Carrick has obviously been hot, and we saw Rempe score not too long ago, and Edstrom's been putting the puck in the net. This is a gag line 2.0, maybe. They had that trivia question that was on the screen last night about the Ranger gag line, the goal a game line that they had back in the day, and at least for a stretch of games here, yeah, gag line 2.0. We can trademark that at the end of the episode, maybe. But you had to kind of break down a couple of their highlights and talk about some of the things that they're bringing to the table every night. I wanted to start on the goal that they scored. This was right after Braden Schneider had scored to make it 1-1 in the first period. Just a tremendous individual effort by Braden Schneider, working his way to the net and getting a little bit of a lucky bounce, but certainly he earned it. Pretty much right after this, you've got Carrick dumping the puck and chasing it into the corner. Edstrom then plays it around the boards to Fox. Fox gets pinned against the boards, but Carrick gets in there and helps him, digs the puck loose. The Flyers briefly got it back. They play it around the boards, but then Edstrom gets to it in the corner. He goes up to Rempe. We're on the other side of the ice at this point. Now we're on the left side. Rempe has it. He goes back to Lindgren. Lindgren goes over to Fox along the boards and then back to Lindgren. Lindgren is at the blue line, right in the center of the ice. He takes a shot. And it looked like Edstrom was the one to tip it home there. He gets credited with another goal, and that puts the Rangers up 2-1 at that point, and that stands as the game-winning goal at the end of the night. But also love to see on this goal that was scored here, Rempe, Edstrom, and Carrick, all three of them in front of the net, creating chaos, creating traffic. That was a theme for a lot of the goals that the Rangers scored in this game, and even a couple of opportunities where maybe the puck didn't necessarily go in, but it's just nice to see this team get back to basics and play the brand of hockey that we know they're capable of and that they need to play if they're going to keep the good times rolling here and eventually be in the playoffs once the regular season concludes. But you get 2 goals scored in 126 here. And to kind of update you on, how this line is producing offensively, Edstrom now with 3 goals in the last 7 games, Carrick with 2 goals in the last 7 games. And of course, Rempe, he's not going to score very often, but he got one in the game before this one. And it's just great to see this. These guys are going out there and giving you big time, high effort, high energy, hard hitting, blue collar hockey. And that's what you want to get from your fourth line. And these guys have certainly contributed in that way. Felt like in the first period, especially, that they were getting a bunch more ice time in this game. I was somewhat surprised after this game was over because I looked up their ice time and wanted to look at what it was relative to, the time on the ice that they typically get on a night-by-night basis. Carrick and Edstrom, their time on the ice was actually down a little bit, which again surprised me because that first period especially, it felt like they were out there for about half the period. And clearly Laviolette was seeing them playing well and reacting to it. So that's nice to see in and of itself. Rempe, though, did get a season high I believe it was 9 minutes and 26 seconds of time on the ice. So obviously, Rempe being rewarded for, his hard work. And there was a story that Sam and Joe shared during the broadcast that during the optional practice earlier in the day, which apparently was well attended, Matt Rempe stayed on for a little bit longer to work with the skills coach. And I've talked about this multiple times. There's going to be people that want to paint Rempe as like just this goon and has no hockey skills and has no business being in the NHL and all this stuff. There was even an opponent chirping that at him in a recent game. That's just a lazy narrative from people who aren't watching. Matt Rempe clearly impacts the game in a positive way, and he's trying to work on other aspects of his game. And if he isn't able to improve in those areas, I think we've seen a lot of evidence, over the last months and whatever, that it certainly will not be for a lack of effort. So, good stuff from Rempe and the entire fourth line. But then just a lot of little plays. We went through the offensive stuff here, but then you've got a situation where the Flyers, they win up face off in the Rangers zone, but the puck ends up coming way out of the zone. It goes the other way. And you've got Edstrom absolutely just flying up the ice to apply some pressure. That results in a turnover by the Flyers. And then Carrick is right there on the doorstep. He's almost able to stuff the puck home, not able to do it. But again, just big time energy and obviously making things happen, this fourth line here. Then there was a situation not too long after this where you get Edstrom going down to block a slap shot, got him right in the knee. You could see in the replay, basically right in the kneecap there. He ends up kind of, hobbling his way over to the bench, and a bunch of teammates came over, were patting him on the back and all that stuff. But, I mean, again, this is fourth line blue-collar physical hockey that we like to see here. I know there's Ranger fans that are certainly fans of this brand of hockey. And then in the third period, I love the reaction that we got from Rempe when Garnet Hathaway was standing over Igor Shesterkin and all of a sudden just forgot how to skate. Imagine that. He's standing over the goalie, forgets how to skate, falls down on top of Igor Shesterkin. One of those classic accidentally on purpose kind of a situations where, obviously he makes contact with the goalie. And a lot of Rangers jumped in there, but Rempe was all over him. And that's great to see as well. We know that Rempe's going to go out there and obviously watch out for his teammates, and further evidence of that here. Basically dragged Hathaway down to the ice while this was happening. But, all three of these guys, they play physical hockey. You look at the last handful of games for all of them. Edstrom has 12 hits in his last 5 games. And keep in mind, that's with limited ice time. Edstrom, I didn't write down the exact time on the ice, but I think he typically gets around, 11 or 12 minutes per night. Sam Carrick, 8 hits in his last 5 games. Again, somewhat limited ice time. And Rempe now has 9 hits in his last 3 times. And as we all know, Rempe has very, very limited ice time, but he makes the most out of it, and he goes out there and hits anything that moves. And those are just the official hits. Very clearly, they do some things from a physical standpoint that don't show up in the stat sheet in terms of, the actual hits that are scored during the game. But, man, these guys are out there winning board battles, throwing their weight around and playing physical, imposing hockey. And, again, that's exactly what you want from your fourth line. And something else that kind of makes me appreciate what this line does and makes me want to root for, frankly, all three of these guys is that they're all kind of the underdogs of this team, right? I mean, maybe not necessarily in a fight because, again, they all bring a certain amount of, toughness and physicality to the table. But think about where we started with these 3 players at the beginning of the season, okay? So Sam Carrick brought in an unheralded free agent pickup for 3 years, right around $1 million per season. And everybody, saw that signing, and I include myself in this, and it was kind of like, Sam Carrick, okay. I mean, I guess we need a fourth line center, whatever. It is what it is. It was just kind of a signing. It wasn't anything to really write home about. But, when that signing was made, you see some of the good things that he does. And I'm talking about him on an episode, a couple of months back or however long ago it was at this point. And it's like, okay, this guy plays a physical brand of hockey, and he can kill some penalties. He can win you some faceoffs. These are all good things. And you try to talk yourself into it a little bit. But then you think about some of the Rangers centers that they've had in recent seasons. At the start of last season, Nick Bonino was the guy. He was the fourth line center. And the season before that, I think it was the season before that, it was Ryan Carpenter. And neither one of them even made it through the halfway point of the season with the Rangers. Now, Carpenter finished out with the Wolfpack, but they never called him back up once they waived him and he cleared waivers and went down to the AHL. So I'm wondering, could this be a similar situation with Carrick? Is he going to end up being squeezed out of the lineup at some point? And that hasn't happened, nor should it happen. He has played, I believe the number is all 48 games with the Rangers this season. However many it is, that's how many that he's played at this point. And same thing for Edstrom. Edstrom has played in every single game for the Rangers this season. Now, Edstrom obviously is in a different part of his career than Carrick. He's a lot younger and just getting started, played a handful of games with the Rangers last season. But even so, coming into training camp this year, I looked at Edstrom and I thought, okay, he's probably like a little bit less than 50-50 to make this team. You've got more highly thought of prospects, guys like Offman, guys like Berard. I thought that Rempe would make the team to start the season, which he did not. And we'll get to Rempe in just a second. But, Edstrom comes up, has a really strong training camp, obviously brings it in the preseason and makes the team, and deservedly so. And he's been in the lineup ever since. And again, deservedly so. And at this point, he ain't going anywhere. Edstrom has carved out a really nice role for himself. And as for Rempe, I mean, we know he's been up and down this season. From the NHL to the AHL, back and forth a whole bunch of times. But he's now become a fixture in this lineup. Matt Rempe has been in the lineup for 8 straight games, and I can't imagine that they would take him out of this lineup certainly anytime soon. Not with the way that the Rangers in general have been playing, and not with the way that this fourth line has been playing. They've been great, and he's obviously been an impactful player. There's people that aren't necessarily a fan of him, and, what's the big deal about this guy? He plays 6 minutes a night. I'm not going to say that like this Ranger turnaround is like due completely to Matt Rempe. I'm not even going to make it sound like Matt Rempe is in the top like 5, maybe even the top 10 biggest reasons why the Rangers have turned things around. But Matt Rempe has been part of this, right? And I do think there's something to be said. There's a positive energy that he brings. And I think maybe certain players on this team, they feel free to play just a little bit bigger when they know that Matt Rempe is in the lineup, on the bench far more than he's on the ice. We know that. He regularly is going to have the least amount of ice time of any Ranger in any given game. But be that as it may, he's still there. He's still a presence. He's still looming. And Laviolette can put him on the ice anytime that he wants. I think the Ranger players know and understand that. And for that reason, I don't look for Matt Rempe to come out of this lineup anytime soon, or either of these other two guys, Edstrom and Carrick as well. And, VZ and Brodzinski, it's rough for them because they're now the odd men out. But I feel for them at a certain level because I don't think either of them like played poorly or did anything to deserve to be taken out of the lineup. But man, you can't touch this fourth line right now. And Arthur Kaliev, I mean, maybe he could be a candidate to be a healthy scratch on this night or on that night, but he's played well recently, starting to feel a little bit more acclimated with the team, it would seem. He had an assist in this game. I mean, who else would you even consider taking out of the lineup, right? So I think these are the 12 guys, certainly for the foreseeable future. And as long as this point streak for the Rangers continues, those are going to be the 12 forwards that you see on the ice. But in just a second, we're going to shift our attention. Filip Chytil scored a goal, had an assist in this game. Very happy for him that he's back and contributing with the Rangers. But I had a little bit of a troubling thought as it pertains to Filip Chytil. It's nothing against him or anything like that. I don't want to make it sound like too scandalous or anything like that. But I'm going to explain what I mean by that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. We all love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year in the summer, Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins at Citi Field in New York. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is Gametime. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, being with me, all of us together on this roller coaster that we call New York Ranger hockey. For our next episode, going to be dropping very likely sometime Sunday night. The Rangers play Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. against the Colorado Avalanche. Another big game. They're all big right now. And obviously the Avs are a good team, and that's a good test. We'll be back with a new episode, like I said, that night. The Rangers have 7 games left before the break for the Four Nations face-off. And the next 5 are all going to be against playoff teams. You've got the Avalanche, the Canes, the Bruins, the Knights, and then the Bruins again. And then after that, you've got the Penguins and the Jackets. And then we get a break for the Four Nations face-off, like I was just saying. So that's where things stand. But I want to shift our attention to Filip Chytil. He scores a goal in this game. Great goal, his 11th of the season. Just a beautiful redirection, kind of an out-of-nowhere goal. Made it 4-1 early in the third period. The shot was from the point by Vakanainen, and Chytil deflected it into the net. And again, increased the Ranger lead. Chytil also had the secondary assist on a goal by Riley Smith on the power play late in the third period. But I will say, when Filip Chytil scored that goal, I had a thought, and I really, really hope that this does not turn out to be the case. But my thought was, I really hope that's not Filip Chytil's final goal as a New York Ranger. And that's a little bit of a sobering thought. I hate to be that way. Things are good right now. The vibes are good. The Rangers, again, points in 10 straight games. But that notion that I just threw out there, it can't be ignored, and it's not as crazy as it might seem because the Rangers continue, by all accounts, to have conversations with the Canucks about JT Miller. And we've seen a couple of different rumors that the Rangers are looking to, maybe include Chytil in a trade package for JT Miller. I hope that doesn't happen. If it does happen, it tells you just what a cool business this can really be when you consider everything that, Filip Chytil has gone through to get back, fighting to get back from all these concussions and, not playing pretty much at all last season, only very sparingly. But I also recognize, look, you have to give up something to get JT Miller. You might be able to get him at a little bit of a discount because we had that unique situation where Miller, apparently only wants to go to the Rangers, if that's to be believed. So you got to give up something, you would think. Is there a way to do it without even giving up, say a Filip Chytil? Can you do a deal for Miller with, Adam Sikora and a first-round pick and maybe one other thing or two other, mid-level prospects? I mean, could you really get JT Miller, who for 3 straight years combined was more than a point per game player? Could you really get him that cheaply? It'd be wild if they could, but it's also possible that, the Canucks, and you can understand this, they're going to want somebody that's spent significant time in the NHL and is, put some good hockey on tape at the NHL. And Filip Chytil would certainly be one of those guys, but it would be a gut punch. I'm not going to act like it wouldn't. I don't know that Filip Chytil can be a deal breaker if you're the Rangers. And I realize Miller does come with some baggage and all that stuff. But when you have a chance to add a player as talented as Miller and as proven as Miller, and Filip Chytil is the biggest thing that you give up going the other way, it would be very difficult to say no to that. But, for the time being, I'm hoping that, Filip Chytil can stick it out with the Rangers. Something else that I got to point to here with Filip Chytil that I think is a really cool stat to share with you guys is that it's entirely possible that he could set a new career high in goals this season. His previous career best is 22 goals. He did that in 2022, 2023. So, man, I mean, he's at 11 right now, so he's a little bit off the pace, but not, dramatically off the pace. He could do it with a little bit of a strong stretch run. And keep in mind, he's missed a handful of games, in the first half of the season. So with that in mind, in terms of games played, without doing some crazy math in my head right now, he might be right about on pace to, tie or eclipse his previous career best of 22 goals. But, what an accomplishment that would be. What a cool story that would be after all the concussions, everything that happened last year, the injury-riddled season, a season in which Filip Chytil did not score any goals because he played 10 regular season games, didn't score, handful of playoff games, didn't score there either. Man, this guy can come back from all that. And what a feel-good story, like I said, that would be to set a new career high in goals for Filip Chytil. I mean, the fact that he's even playing is already a feel-good story, but that would just take it up to the next level. There's one more thing I want to mention about Chytil here before we shift gears and talk a little bit about, this idea, not so crazy idea all of a sudden that the Rangers very well could make the playoffs. I want to say one thing in defense of Filip Chytil because I saw a comment the other day that I just thought was so far off base and just one of those comments that somebody makes without really thinking about it. There was somebody that referred to Filip Chytil as soft. Where do I begin with this? First of all, his style of play. Now, he's not going to go out there and rack up a whole bunch of hits the way that other players in the Rangers are going to do. I think that much is very clear. But this is somebody that willingly this season and consistently has shown an ability and just the flat-out guts to go to the front of the net. He has multiple times this season, Filip Chytil, gone to the front of the Ranger net and taken like a big-time hit, sometimes up high, and you hold your breath every single time that it happens. He's willing to do that. He's willing to drive to the net. He's willing to set up shop in front of the net, in anticipation of a pass that might be coming his way. And he does it up against defensemen who are quite a bit bigger than him on some occasions. I mean, Chytil's a big guy, but some of the defensemen are just bigger. I mean, it is what it is. And I'll wager that most of these defensemen that he's going up against have not suffered as many concussions as he has. I believe, I don't know if there's like an official confirmation of this, but I think the believed number of concussions that Filip Chytil has sustained is up to 4. So there's that. How about the mental toughness? You want to call somebody soft. He suffers all these concussions and, he's suffering from dizziness. He had that horrifying collapse during the skate around, basically. It was a glorified open skate. It was him and the other 2 healthy scratches. They were on the ice, and he just collapses to the ice. He has to go multiple days when he's out with the injury, out with the concussion, where, he's sensitive to light, and he can't even, go to places that are brightly lit, and he's at home. And, think about this last season, how much that would eat you up if you're Chytil. and you're watching the Rangers and they're going on this great run and they're up there at the top of the NHL standings, and you have to watch all this from home and not know when you're going to be back, if you're going to be back. And for him to come back from all that BS and this year play the way that he's played and be up to 11 goals, possibly on his way to setting a new career high, and somebody's going to call him soft, get the hell out of here with that nonsense. That's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I always respect everybody's opinion when it comes to sports, but to me, this isn't even really a sports opinion. You take somebody that's gone through everything that Filip Chytil has gone through, and you want to call him soft, get out of here with that nonsense. But in just a minute, we're going to shift gears, and we are going to talk about the Rangers and the possibility of them making the playoffs, which all of a sudden, that sounded ridiculous as recently as a couple of weeks ago. It's at the point where it almost feels likely. So we're going to discuss that in detail in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has got you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and close out today's episode by talking about, again, what recently sounded like a crazy idea, and all of a sudden it's not so crazy. The idea that the Rangers are going to, against all odds, pull themselves out of whatever you want to call that, a funk, a rut, just a disastrous stretch of hockey. You guys saw it just as well as I did, and you know how bad it was and how hopeless it looked for a while there. But now, 10-game point streak for the Rangers, 7-0-3 in their last 10 games, 17 points out of a possible 20, and they've climbed back up the standings, and they're right there. And, they went through this 4-game stretch that I highlighted. They just concluded it with the win against the Flyers. But there were 4 games, like I said, against teams in the Eastern Conference that were just slightly ahead of the Rangers. They go 3-0-1 in that stretch. You get the 1-0 shootout win against the Jackets, 5-4 overtime loss to the Canadiens, 5-0 win against the Senators, and now a 6-1 win against the Flyers. And you guys let me know if you feel the same way on what I'm about to say here. But I watch all these games, and especially the last 2, the ones against the Senators and the Flyers. And you see the Rangers competing against these teams and basically just running them out of the building. And I watch this, and I just can't for the life of me understand, and I don't mean any disrespect here to the Senators or the Flyers, but I can't for the life of me understand how we've gotten this deep into the season, and up until just recently, both these teams were ahead of the Rangers in these standings. Because what do these 2 teams do? Either one of them, in any aspect of hockey, what do they do significantly better than the Rangers, or even just better than the Rangers? Does anybody think that the Senators, looked like a better team than the Rangers a couple of nights ago? How about the Flyers? Can you point to a single thing that the Flyers did in that game where you say, well, the Flyers have an edge against the Rangers in that area? Certainly not in goalie, not in defense, at least not in that night. Special teams, no. I mean, the Ranger power play is scuffled, but they're starting to pick it back up. Had at least the 1 power play goal in this game. I mean, depth, the Flyers don't have the kind of depth that the Rangers have. We just got done putting over the 4th line and talking about how big they've been and how well they've played. Does the Flyer 4th line play that well night in and night out, the way that this Ranger 4th line has recently? So in terms of star power and offensive upside, the Rangers have them beat there too. Grit and physicality, I would say the Rangers won that battle in this game. So there's really nothing. And it's getting to a point now where, now that the Rangers have pulled even with teams such as this, I feel like they are eventually going to create some separation. I don't know that for sure. And obviously we keep our fingers crossed that they really have come out of their funk and that they all have their heads on straight. And if there's a trade made, they don't go back into this malaise and they don't all start sulking again the way it seemed to be going when the Trouba trade happened, the Kakko trade happened. The team was just a mess, top to bottom, every way imaginable. The effort wasn't there, the energy wasn't there, and they've clearly done a 180 over this last bunch of games here. So there's all that to consider. The fact that the teams that the Rangers are neck and neck with, I think the Rangers are better than most of those teams, and I think they'll eventually create some separation. But we've been talking on and off pretty much for a week at least on this podcast about JT Miller, there is still the very real possibility that the Rangers are going to bring him in. And at least on paper, and I know Miller has some baggage and there's some questions about his attitude, but on paper, JT Miller makes this Ranger team even better. So if you add JT Miller and you do it for, certainly not a king's ransom, you get certainly a discount to acquire JT Miller. That's going to make this team better too. I mean, how could it not, right? JT Miller has established himself as, I would say, at least a top 20 player in the league. And I know things are, dramatic in Vancouver right now, but you would have to think if the Raiders are really the only team that he wants to go to, then you would have to think that, okay, he wants to be here. It's going to reignite the fire, the passion, the energy that he plays with, because that's one thing that you can't take away from him. When JT Miller is going well, obviously he brings a lot of fire to the rink. So there's that to consider, that he very well might be a Ranger. And again, you look at the standings right now, Rangers are just 1 point behind the Blue Jackets for the final playoff spot, and the Rangers have a game in hand. Now, the Rangers are also tied with the Senators and the Canadiens, but 1 point out is 1 point out. So they're right there. There's plenty of time to get this thing done. They have to continue to play with the kind of urgency that I think they've shown over this recent stretch. But I'll throw one more thing at you guys here. If you want to be like an ultimate opportunist, that's Edge. The ultimate optimist, we'll say. If you want to be the ultimate optimist, maybe this stretch that the Rangers have gone through actually makes them a little bit tougher in the long run. I mean, things were bad. Nobody had any answers. Nobody looked like they wanted to be there. And you can look at that and say, like, well, that looks like a team that got knocked down and stayed down, right? And that's obviously not a good omen as far as what's to come. And, if the Rangers face adversity again, are they going to do what they did a couple of months ago and, curl back into a ball in the corner? Hopefully not. But maybe, just maybe, there's something to be learned from that, gained from that, and maybe now the Rangers, they feel that much better about where they are, and, they can look at each other and know, what, we went through some dark times, but we found our way out of it, and we're battling every night now, and we're playing quality hockey, and look, if they get into the playoffs, I don't know that they're a team that other teams are going to be lining up to play. I mean, it's, you'd have to look at the whole standings board, but when you look at how good the Rangers were last year and the fact that they made it to the Eastern Conference Final and went toe-to-toe with Florida, I don't know. To me, that's a tough draw for just about any team in the first round. Of course, the ultimate X factor in Igor Shesterkin, man, does he look like he's back to his old self. So, yeah, man, a lot of things to like right now. And, a couple other thoughts on the standings and everything. You look at where everything stands right now. The Devils have been slipping a little bit. They're starting to come back to earth a little bit. They're down to third in the division. And, people are saying things like, watch the Rangers, they'll rally out of this, they'll buy at the trade deadline, and then they'll just lose in the first round of the playoffs anyway. And that could happen. That's a very real possibility. I'm not going to sit here and act like that can't possibly happen. But keep in mind, I just mentioned the Devils, they're slipping. Who are the other two teams in the Metro Division right now that are ahead of the Rangers in the playoff chase? I guess technically it's 4, because I think the Jackets are they still a point ahead? I believe they're 1 point ahead of the Rangers. So you've got the Jackets, but the three teams I want to focus on are the Devils, who again are slipping a little bit, and also the Caps are leading the way in that division, and right behind them are the Carolina Hurricanes. Yeah, those are the two teams that the Rangers knocked out of the playoffs last year. And I know last year was a long time ago, and I know that all these teams are different from last year, and playing better in the case of the Caps and the Canes and whatnot. I mean, the Canes are probably about where they were this year as they were last year, because they're always right in the middle of everything. But the bottom line, how much can a team really change in 1 year? Can they change so dramatically? Like in the case of the Capitals, Rangers swept them in the first round, and I don't think they even trailed in any of those games. Maybe game 4. But the Rangers swept them out of the playoffs. Facts are facts. So the Rangers dominated last year's Capitals. Are the Rangers really going to just get absolutely destroyed by this year's Capitals? And again, I know they added some important players, Chychrun, Pierre-Luc Dubois, but I don't know. I mean, to me, that's not going to be a walk in the park for the Capitals. I don't think it would be a walk in the park for the Canes either. The Rangers have had the Canes number recently. They've played a lot better against the Canes in the last handful of seasons. And again, they've knocked them out of the playoffs twice, this year and 3 seasons ago. So 2 in the last 3 years. So, I don't look at any of these teams in front of them and think like, oh man, the Rangers have no chance. Would they go in as the underdog? Yeah, probably. And probably deservedly so. But I think they can go toe to toe with any of these teams in the Metro, especially based on how they've played recently. So obviously we hope that the good times keep rolling. One more thing that I want to mention here before we call it. I thought this was kind of a cool stat. All 6 Ranger defensemen in this game recorded at least 1 point. You had a goal and an assist for both Keandre Miller and Adam Fox. You had a goal for Braden Schneider, and then you had an assist for Borgen, Vakanainen, and Lindgren. And I do want to spend some more time on these defensemen because I think all 6 of them have really played well recently, and they deserve their due. You know, we gave props to the 4th line, but we got to give some props to the defensemen going forward. What I'm hoping happens is we get a shutout of the Avalanche where they get about 16 shots on goal, and then I can really talk about these guys and really hype them up in the next episode. But regardless of what happens there, very good bet that we're going to be spending some more time on these defensemen. I saw after this last game against the Flyers, Peter Laviolette was talking about Keandre Miller in particular and really put him over big as far as just having a really strong game. He said the offense was nice, and of course it is, but Miller just had a really good game overall, was just playing some heavy hockey, the brand of hockey that I think we all know that Miller is capable of playing, and we've seen him play it in the past. And unfortunately, it just kind of comes and goes with him a little bit. But, you know, he certainly is stabilized. And I think that pairing, you know, him and Borgen, that's really working out well. Laviolette spoke very highly of Borgen not too long ago. But we'll get to that in the next episode. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. But, yeah, this group of 6 Ranger defensemen has really stepped up and really played their best hockey over the last handful of games that they've played the entire season. But yeah, we can call it there for today. Once again, if you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.